Hello and welcome back to the finals of the World Championship in Through the Ages. The standings that you can see here are the standings that you saw at the end of the last video on my channel. However, in the meantime, there was a very special video uploaded on PV4's channel where I, PV4 and Marta Becher together discussed our three-player game of the World Championship finals. And yeah, that was a lot of fun to record, and in case you didn't take a look at that yet, I definitely recommend to you to check that one out because it was really a lot of fun, and it's I think a very special thing to get insights from all of the three involved players of the game. So I will put a link to this video into the description of the video, and if you want to watch this video without knowing the end of the result, then you should pause that video now, because now we are going to take a look at the standings, how they were after the three-player game against PV4 and Marta Becher. And here we have the updated standings. Marta Becher was able to win the three-player game, and actually for me and PV4 it ended in a tie, so that was quite close. And yeah, for the mathematicians among you, maybe you have noticed that Marta Becher, with now being at 25 points, cannot be catched any longer. It's not any longer possible for any of the players to overtake him. PV4 is only two games left, and it can't score enough points to overtake him. I have 4 games left, but I have only 5 points so far, which is definitely a little bit disappointing. So I also can't overtake Marta Becher any longer. So with that result from the video that we recorded together, we have now our world champion of this year, Marta Becher, and yeah, definitely big congratulations to him. A very, very strong result, being the world world champion, even with yeah, having 1 game to spare. So a very strong performance by him, meaning that for me, I have to now try to maybe at least still get into the top 3, which would mean that I'm in the prize pool and yeah, at least score a medal at the end. So maybe finishing second or at least third is now the goal for me. And one step towards this goal I can now do in the last one of the three-player games, which will be against PV4 and against E5, so against the 2 players that I ideally now would like to try to overtake. And yeah, without further ado, we are going to take a look at that game. And this game you maybe have already seen, because PV4 covered it already. So now you can maybe see the game from my perspective. And those of you who haven't seen the game from PV4's perspective, I will also put a link to this video in the description of the video in case you want to check that one out. But now without further ado, let's take a look at the game. I am playing in the second position in this game, and first of all we can take a look at the leaders and wonders. And we can see that there is some theater synergy in H3 with Marlene Dietrich, Fleming, and the Hollywood being there, also the internet. There's also Gandhi to potentially hide behind, and also the Manhattan Project for the military. We have no Red Cross, but there are also some lab leaders like Bill Gates, Marie Curie, and Albert Einstein. In H2 we have the ocean liner service and the Harvard College as 2 strong economical wonders. However, the Suez Canal and also James Cook are missing. The railroad is also not there, but James Watt we have. No Maria Theresa, but we have Shakespeare and Gaudy as culture leaders. We have Nobel, but no Newton. We have also Bach, of course, as a culture leader, and then Napoleon and Robespierre as military action leaders. In H1 we have only Joan of Arc as military action leader. Barbarossa and Saladin can potentially help with the strength, as well as Genghis Khan. Eleanor and Columbus are very nice transitional leaders. And then we have Leonardo for some lab and printing press synergy. For the wonders, we have the 2 science wonders with Silk Road and Universitas. We have St. Peter's Basilica, but no Forbidden City. Great Wall, but no Himeji Castle. E5 is in the first position, and he makes the decision to go for Hammurabi, and I think that leaves me with a relatively clear pick for my leader. I will go for Boudica and the stockpile, getting a very strong leader and also a solid yellow card. And there is the chance that maybe PV4 could end up having Sun Tzu. I didn't expect him to take him now, but he could, for example, just take the Rome roads, and then Sun Tzu might be an option. But then I maybe have to build 1 warrior relatively early, but I think even in such a scenario, Boudica can still produce quite some nice value, and at least with the additional food from the stockpile, maybe I can then, even when I build a warrior relatively quickly afterwards, also get my second lab going. PV4 will indeed just grab the Roam Roads. He will have a lot of leaders to choose from at his next turn. Now it will be interesting to see what wonders will be coming out of the deck. And there is the Pyramids revealed, however E5 is also still looking for a wonder, and that makes it of course very likely that he will now grab the Pyramids for himself, leaving me only with the Acropolis, which is maybe not ideal, especially because I can't take it for 2 civil actions. I don't want to take it for 2 civil actions now. E5 has no Hammurabi and the Pyramids, but I think he likes to have quite a lot of civil actions from what I have seen from his game so far, so he is probably very happy about this combination. Now it is my turn, and while I first was unhappy to see that the Pyramids are gone, now I was actually quite happy to see what is revealed on the row, because as you can see, there's a very early Silk Road revealed, and that is a wonder that I really like a lot to get very early, and even better it is that I have the stockpile in hand, which is actually quite a nice synergy with the Silk Road, so this yellow card might now be able to score me an additional resource, an additional food, and with that I was actually quite happy to see how this early game went for me, with me now having the chance to grab the Silk Road at the next turn with both of my opponents already having committed to a wonder. Now it's just a question what to do this turn. I definitely want to go for Boudica. I want to build a mine, and I don't care about the Engineering Genius for 2. The Silk Road will take a lot of civil actions to build, so I just increase my population. I could now just play the stockpile, something that I maybe would have done if, for example, there would be no Silk Road in the roll, when I maybe would expect to, for example, take the Acropolis at the next turn, or maybe hope to get something going. Then I would just, for efficiency, maybe just play the stockpile, but now that I have the chance to maybe play it with the Silk Road bonus later on, I instead want to take a yellow card. And of course the urban growth could be quite interesting, could even allow me to maybe at the next turn take the Silk Road, build a step, and then just even immediately with the Silk Road bonus build a second lab, get my science production going. That could potentially be interesting. However, at the end I came to the conclusion that it is more important to take this copy of Frugality. And there are 2 reasons to that. The first reason is that with taking the Frugality it should be completely certain. In theory, it's not completely certain. If none of the cards are taken before the Silk Road could still stay on 2 civil actions before my next turn, but if only 1 card is taken, like Code of Laws, Engineering Genius, now the Silk Road will be available for 1 civil action for me the next turn. And first I thought that it maybe isn't even that important, because the thing is, even if I now take the urban growth, it's very, very likely that both Engineering Genius and Code of Laws will be taken before my next turn, and then the Silk Road would be available for me anyway, so I thought maybe that isn't actually that important, but I think there are some scenarios, some situations where maybe it could actually happen that not both of those cards are taken. For example, now PV4, he could, for example, go for Ashoka, maybe just elect him and take, for example, the Code of Laws. However, with the Rome Roads, Ashoka is maybe not that great, so he could maybe also just go for either Sansu or Homer and maybe take none of those cards. And then E5 has, of course, a lot of civil actions with Hammurabi, but if there's something interesting on the roll revealed after the Silk Road, for example, an early copy of Iron, or maybe anything else that he wants to take, maybe a monarchy to do a revolution or something, then it could happen that he maybe takes this card for expensive and maybe only one of those 2 cards, and then the Silk Road would stay on 2 civil actions for me if I now don't take this copy of Frugality. And the second reason is that it, as I said, could maybe happen that PV4 goes for Sansu, meaning that I have to use the military resource from Boudica, in which case it might be even better to have some additional food lying around, so that after having built a warrior, I still will be able to build my second lab relatively quickly. I have of course the stockpile to also get some additional food, but I would have to use an additional civil action to play it, and so I will also with this reason thought that the Frugality is definitely not bad to have here. I draw the Good Harvest and the Blunder. I was not interested to see what PV4 will choose as a leader, and he indeed will go for Sansu, which is maybe not ideal for me as Boudica, but also not too bad. He will now go for building a mine and increasing his population, letting the Code of Law stay on 2 civil actions for E5. And E5 will now build a step of the Pyramids to get out of corruption, and he makes an interesting decision here. He grabs actually Saladin for 3 civil actions, and now there is actually that scenario happening that I feared a little bit, and which was the reason that I didn't take the urban growth. E5 is now ending up taking a card for 3, will only take the Engineering Genius, and if I wouldn't have taken this Frugality, now I would have to pay an additional civil action for the Silk Road actually. So, yeah, an interesting choice from e5. As I said, he seems to value civil actions quite a lot, so maybe he didn't want to give this early Saladin to any of his opponents. He had Hammurabi, so Saladin is maybe only a small upgrade. I mean, it is nice to get now more draws in, but yeah, an interesting decision, especially if you miss out on some potentially strong cards like an Engineering Genius 1 or the Code of Laws. So, yeah, interesting pick, but I was now mainly happy that I took the frugality the turn before, because that allows me now to take the Silk Road for only one civil action. This turn I of course want to use Boudica's resources, so that hopefully the next turn I will be able to choose what I want to get from her. And then I will definitely take the Silk Road. I think that's a very strong wonder to get early. Now I have already 2 yellow cards in hand in the stockpile, so that makes it, I think, a very strong wonder now for me to get, and even for one civil action. And then the question is how to use the 3 civil actions. Of course, I could already maybe build a step, use the frugality with the Silk Road bonus, just do some civil actions already. But when we take a look at the row, there are 2 copies of knights coming down the row, and PV4 is playing Sun Tzu, so missing out on a copy of knights could potentially be punished quite badly. And also, as an additional reason, with having Boudica, if I in a few turns again maybe have to take a military resource, it is just very nice to have a military technology in hand that I can use and maybe invest those resources in an efficient way. So I think the knights are maybe at a high priority here, but with the Silk Road I need a lot of civil actions to finish it, so maybe it could be an idea to just ignore the knights, build a step, increase my population with the frugality, and maybe take the Code of Laws. Having an additional civil action could be quite important maybe as well for the Silk Road, but at the end, with Sun Tzu in play, I made the decision to take 1 copy of knights, because if I don't take one, it could just be that both copies are taken away. PV4 then would even be able, if I take the Code of Laws, to get a copy of knights for only 1 civil action. E5 has a lot of civil actions anyway, and so I didn't want to miss out on them. Was willing to take 1 for 2 civil actions, and now the question is, do I also want to take this copy of Code of Laws? Because with the Silk Road, going up to 5 civil actions could be quite interesting. On the other hand, I now delayed my lab already by 1 turn. I will maybe be able to get some additional signs from Boudica, of course, also from the Silk Road, so it definitely could be argued that the Code of Laws could be quite nice to have. However, if I at the next turn want to build my second lab, with using the frugality with the Silk Road bonus, which I all really would like to do, then I'm very much quite inflexible at the next turn, because if I take the Code of Laws now, then in order to build my second lab, I really would like to build a step, increase the population 2 times, 1 time with the frugality, and then I could build my second lab, leaving me with no free civil action at all. Maybe I don't need anything now that I have the knights that importantly, and the Code of Laws could be important to have. However, if I invest 5 signs into the knights, and maybe also want to get a copy of Iron or Alchemy or something, then maybe the signs could also be needed elsewhere than in the Code of Laws. And yeah, so at the end it was quite a close decision for me. I kind of wanted to have it in hand, but I also feared that maybe I could get some issues with it. Maybe I can't invest into it easily the next few turns anyway, because maybe I have to go for knights relatively early, and then maybe it could make it a bit more difficult for me to get my developments going. And also with building a step of the Silk Road, I actually have the option, in case there's something revealed like development of markets, crafts, or trade routes, then I would actually have the option to just finish the Silk Road without having corruption. And then yeah, that would also be an option that I otherwise wouldn't have. That of course means that a Code of Laws will stay on 1 civil action available for PV4, but it doesn't have a leader or wonder that gives him additional signs for now. If I take the Code of Laws, the Iron would fall down to 1 for him. Maybe he wants to take the Knights anyway, so I wasn't really concerned about giving the Code of Laws to PV4. It mostly was only hurtful to pass on it for myself. Maybe I should have taken it, but at the end I made the decision to build this step. I draw the red. Sadly, I see that the open borders agreement is accepted between my 2 opponents. That's of course always not great to see when that is when your opponents have that early in the game. PV4 now will go for the knights, will go for the breakthrough, will pass on the Code of Laws, will pass the Iron, and he just makes sure to have a copy of knights, maybe have the ability to go for some military pressure later on. e5 seeds, the development of markets are revealed, giving me the option if I take the resources to just finish the Silk Road at the next turn if I want to. Also, as you can see, there is actually a second copy of Code of Laws coming down the row now. e5 will finish the pyramids, builds the second lab, thanks to taking the resource from the development of markets. He has enough resources to do both, and then he takes the rich land, the iron, and also the engineering genius, has now enough resources to go for 2 iron upgrades at the next turn, and is now also at 6 civil actions, 3 military actions thanks to the pact, so that is definitely not looking bad, and he could maybe set up quite a strong position for himself. Now it is my turn. I don't really want to push because that could just cause some corruption issues, and it could have been an option for me to just finish the Silk Road, get an additional science production going. I would still not be in consumption, however I also wouldn't have a free population, which could of course potentially be bad. So I think that could be an option. But at the end I made a decision against it, and this turn I increased my population 2 times, built a lab, and now I actually went for the Code of Laws, because now it's the second copy. If I don't take it, I know that I don't get any copy at all. Also a copy of Monarchy would be gone, and I think it could just be quite important to have a way to get more civil actions. The deck is not moving very quickly. PV4 maybe wants to still get the Rome roads going, so maybe I have some time before I can go for the knights. Maybe I should have already taken it at the turn before, but now I think I can take it maybe a little bit more easily. I delay finishing the Silk Road, but I get the science production going anyway with building the second lab, and maybe at the next turn I could just develop the Code of Laws and finish the Silk Road, depending on if there's anything interesting on the row. A card that also could have been considered is Barbarossa. With the stockpile I will be able to generate some food, and then he can maybe build some military very efficiently, but I don't know yet what tactic I want to work towards, and just keeping Boudica might also work out fine. Maybe Eleanor could be interesting at the next turn. However, if my plan indeed will be to just finish the Silk Road, then I might not have the necessary civil actions to take her, and then there is Leonardo and Joan of Arc left. Joan of Arc with the additional military action could actually also turn out to be quite a nice leader, especially in case there will be some military pressure going on with the upgraded tactic from Sun Tzu. I will now draw the wealthy territory and the raid. PV4 seeds, the development of politics is revealed, so even more draws for him, and the draws that I have gotten is the fighting band, crusades, and another aggression. PV4 will increase his population again, that gets him out of corruption. Then he goes for Columbus. He has had a lot of draws, so it's quite likely that he has a strong colony available, and then he will build 1 step of the Rome roads, making it that he can finish it at the next turn while still being able to have 1 free civil action, or maybe take something, or to maybe develop the knights in case there are some additional resource revealed. Then he could build 1, e5 will go for the iron now, goes for 2 upgrades, is now at 5 resource production, so that's definitely looking quite strong for him. He will get some additional science as well now with the cultural heritage, and also takes the irrigation. There is an ocean liner service, so it could serve as a cheap way to get out of famine, and just now he has something in hand that guarantees him to be able to upgrade his food production. I this turn will actually seed the reds. At the moment, I mean, it's not clear how nicely that will work out, but I will have the knowledge about it, which is a big advantage, and so at the end I wanted to see it. I'm not sure if I was maybe hoping for a development. Maybe a very strong development could be the development of Civil Life. That's of course only 1, so it's a bit of a stretch to hope for exactly that one, but if that should be revealed, I could develop the Code of Laws with it, and then I could finish the Silk Road and take Eleanor, getting a leader that could potentially be quite strong as a transitional leader for only 1 civil action, knowing that I will get a civil action back when replacing Boudica, because if I don't take Eleanor now, then I don't know when those other leaders will be available. I don't know if I maybe get an alchemy for Leonardo, so I think that could be quite nice, and at least I will have the knowledge about the reds, so in this scenario I was willing to push. And the event revealed is the development of warfare, something that I didn't really like that much to see, because if you noticed at PV4's turn, he revealed a medieval army tactic, meaning that likely this tactic will get upgraded, and I don't really need a 3rd warrior. It would even cause some uprising issues immediately. I would need to use the stockpile, and so I just skip on the development of warfare, but of course that isn't ideal when you can't make use out of a development. And then this turn I will develop the Code of Laws, and then just finish the Silk Road, going up to 3 science production, meaning that at the next turn I could potentially be missing 1 science to go for the knights. However, to make it maybe a bit more likely that I don't have to use the military resource from Boudica, I will now reveal the fighting band tactic, so that PV4, if he maybe takes the free warrior, that alone won't be enough to overtake me in strength, and then maybe I can just choose what I want to have from Boudica in case I have to get additional military resources. Then of course I would like to build a knight. However, all of the 3 developments that give additional science are not revealed yet, meaning there is also a decent chance that in this scenario I could then maybe develop the knights and start building one with the additional resource from Boudica. I miss out on Eleanor. I thought about taking her, delaying the Silk Road, but that's just some value that I miss out on. It's a bit of a hassle to get out of corruption then, and so at the end I was willing to maybe either wait for Joan of Arc or Leonardo, especially Joan of Arc could maybe be interesting because of the additional military action. I keep the Good Harvest in the Crusades and draw the Inhabitor territory, meaning that PV4 maybe has the vast territory for his Columbus. He will see it opens the development of agriculture, so no additional science yet. PV4 will then finish the Roman roads, takes the frugality, and is now at 3 strength with taking the free warrior, but thanks to me revealing the fighting band tactic, I maybe can still choose what I want to get from Boudica. And in case not, there is now the development of trade routes, making it that I can go for knights at the next turn in case e5 now should get stronger, and he will take the free warrior, will develop the swordsman after playing the cultural heritage, and then builds one. He knows that he has missed out on the knights, and maybe knows that very quickly there could be some military pressure, and with that he is actually getting stronger, forcing me to now invest in the knights, but now that some additional science has been revealed, that's actually not too bad for me. I definitely don't want to push because I just pushed the reds into the deck, but now I can maybe nicely prepared for the reds. I will first of all increase my population. Definitely want to use the additional resource from Boudica to build an additional knight. That's still not enough to get out of corruption, so I have to increase my population again, which I want to do anyway because of the reds. And then the question is what to do with my last 2 civil actions. I could just take some stuff, maybe the breakthrough for example, maybe the alchemy to at the next turn go for Leonardo, but I'm missing 1 science to do this, and so and I also still thought that Joan of Arc could maybe still end up being quite important. And at the end I made the decision to play the stockpile, which is on one hand maybe not ideal, because there is the chance that reds are revealed before my next turn, meaning that I basically only get 2 resources out of it. But even if I get only the 2 resources out of it, it's basically 2 resources for 1 civil action, which I think is still a nice deal. And there is the chance that the reds aren't revealed and that the age doesn't end. I won't take any card from the row apart from this urban growth. I will now play the stockpile, build another knight to get out of corruption, putting me at 7 strength, and then take the urban growth. PV4 maybe won't be able to take any card from the row, with being a bit difficult to get out of corruption. E5 has a lot of civil action, so there's definitely the danger that maybe the age could end, but if not, then maybe I have the chance to increase my population at the next turn and then very nicely be prepared for the reds in the stockpile, allowing me to get an additional population out before the end of the age. However, if you take a close look, then you might notice that if I lose the 2 yellow tokens, I actually have some happy face issues, but I was hoping that maybe I will be able to fix those with going for the bread and circuses, or which I actually was also maybe hoping for, is to get a Great Wall. I thought that even though I don't have the ideal tactic for it, I will get 2 additional strength in the happy face, might actually be quite nice, and it could be quite important to have maybe a bit of additional strength, so if the Great Wall is available at the next turn, the age hasn't ended yet, then I can maybe set myself up so that I can just finish it in 2 turns. So I was hoping either for bread and circuses or maybe to have the chance to take the Great Wall at the next turn. Otherwise, I could potentially have some uprising issues once we are entering age 1. I will keep the Good Harvest and the Crusades in hand. PV4 will now go for knights, builds 1, that is not enough for him to overtake me in strength. He will now go for Columbus, and then he will build another knight, so again, if I still have Boudica, if the age doesn't end, will be able to take the additional military resource from her, which this time maybe won't be that easy to use. PV4 takes 1 card from the row, the breakthrough. E5 now would have to take quite a lot of cards, so it was quite likely at my turn, with me only taking the urban growth, that the age won't end, but potentially maybe there would be the option for E5 to end it. Sadly, I see him going for the bread and circuses, taking 1 option away from me to maybe not have an uprising issue, and also the Great Wall is not really on the row yet, so now we have to see how I can maybe set myself up to not have an uprising issue at my next turn, because as you can see, the Great Wall is still not revealed, the bread and circuses are gone now, so now I have to see how I will set myself up for that. I don't want to push as I'm the weakest, and also the reds could be revealed, preventing me from getting an additional population out. There is Leonardo and Alchemy both available for 1 civil action, but I think it will be important to have the additional military action and strength potentially from Joan of Arc. This turn I will get a temple to get out of corruption anyway, so she will give me a bit of an additional strength. And also PV4 could maybe have something like vast territory. If he should have this, he can go for another army, making him quite threatening. So I think here the military action and the additional strength from Joan of Arc is just too important, and so I went for her, elected her. Sadly, I don't really have a good way to use the additional military resources this turn from Boudica. I don't have enough science to go for swordsmen, I don't want to destroy anything, so I just will have to not use them, which is of course not ideal. But at least I can go for Joan of Arc now. I will build a religion to get out of corruption. Sadly, can't use the Urban Growth because thanks to the Silk Road bonus it would not help me to get out of corruption. And now I have 1 civil action left, and I don't really want to disband anything. I want to keep all of my units to now, when I at the next turn can copy the tactic, have 2 upgraded medieval army tactics ongoing. And so there's basically only one way to secure me to not have an uprising issue without having to delete anything, and that is actually the Theocracy, which I normally don't like too much in 3 and 4 player games, because it can just be a bit bad if you stay on low civil actions for too long. But in this scenario, maybe it is really needed, maybe it's actually not too bad, because I have at least Joan of Arc, so the Theocracy gets more valuable with that. There might be some military pressure, maybe I can even put some military pressure on e5 or something like this. And it just guarantees that at the next turn I will have a way to not have to disband anything, and with that I took it in hand. Maybe there's actually also team sports or organized religion in the row. In this case I maybe don't have to commit to it, but in case not, then I can go for it. At least I have the Code of Laws, at least I am at 5 civil actions, and at least I have Joan of Arc for some more synergy with the Theocracy here. Then I will now draw 3 cards. A colonization card, Joan of Arc, and building the religion was also quite important to not be in danger of an aggression. If I just go for Leonardo and stay on 2 civil actions, then PV4 could have gone for a very safe aggression, but now with even drawing a colonization card I'm completely safe, and H2 will start now. Now it's interested to see if PV4 will use Columbus immediately, and indeed will use him, getting the vast territory 1, having now a lot of population available. He will go for the iron, and then increases his population, gets some production going, doesn't go for more units yet. Also, as you can see, the first card from H2 is actually an organized religion, meaning that at the next turn I have actually a choice if I want to go for the Theocracy or if I want to go for the organized religion. E5 seats, and I was happy to not get punished by a strength event. Instead, the scientific breakthrough is revealed, giving me in PV4 3 and E5 2 science. For E5 not the ideal timing, but because he this turn will just take and finish the Universitas, which I think is quite a strong turn for him. The Great Wall could also be quite important for him, but he could have still a chance to get that one at the next turn, and the additional science production will just be so helpful for him. But for him now, of course, it would have been better if the scientific breakthrough would have stayed in the deck for a little bit longer. Then it is my turn. I definitely want to copy the medieval army tactic, making me even the strongest. Also, of course, now I see what is on top, thanks to Joan of Arc and the event on top. I was not too happy to see, because it is actually the barbarians, and so I don't want to see it. And now that when I copy the tactic, I will be the strongest, and I was hoping that maybe PV4 will push, and that the barbarians could maybe be out without any harm being done to me. And then, yeah, now I have to make a decision. Do I want to commit to the Theocracy, or do I want to leave myself open for an H2 government and go for the organized religion, which of course also gives me quite some additional strength with having Joan of Arc. And so I will go for the organized religion, because the thing is also, if I just develop the Theocracy, I still have some corruption issues, and it's not that easily possible to get rid of this. I could just build another religion. It was a line that I considered, just developing Theocracy, building another religion again without the urban growth, so that didn't feel too great. And at the end, I just, now that the organized religion is available, and now that this also works quite nicely with Joan of Arc, instead went for that, because that allows me to actually use the urban growth with the Silk Road bonus and still just be able to get out of corruption. I am not committed to the Theocracy, meaning that I am able to go for an H2 government form, hopefully, and with my last civil action I just picked a rich land, because that will be of big help when I want to go for the coal. Now I'm at 15 strength, meaning that PV4, if he wants to get stronger, has to actually go for another army. So I was hoping that either PV4 doesn't get stronger, or that he will push at his turn, so that hopefully I won't be getting hit by the barbarians that I saw on top. Then I will only draw 1 card this turn, the strategic territory. And sadly, PV4 doesn't push, and as you can see, is going for the strategy and is actually going for quite a big amount of strength, going up to 21, is still drawing 3 cards, so has maybe the chance to draw some aggressions or wars, and that is definitely putting quite some pressure on me, and maybe especially e5. He will go for the Great Wall now, but he can't finish it this turn, meaning that now he is for one turn at least quite vulnerable. Is only at 9 strength, goes now up to 10, and can't maybe defend against aggression anyway, so he doesn't bother even taking the strength from Saladin, and yeah, with that he definitely could get hit by an aggression. It is actually guaranteed with the open borders agreement, so yeah, or even without it, because he's only drawn 2 H2 cards, so with that, if PV4 has drawn a strong H2 aggression, he can go for it at the next turn, which could definitely be a big setback for e5. Now at my turn there's no coal in the row yet, however there's something else that will improve my economy quite nicely, and it is the scientific method that makes it possible for me to get out of corruption and also increase my science production, which definitely will be quite helpful. So I go for an upgrade. After that I have 2 civil actions left. I definitely want to take this copy of reserves, because with the Silk Road I can either use it for resources, which is quite a lot with having only bronze mine production, or I could use it for food, which would just be enough to get an additional population out, so just a very strong card to have. And then with the last civil action, I basically need to decide between architecture or cavalryman. I don't want to use the rich land to build an additional farm or mine, which would basically be the only real alternative. And the cavalryman, of course, could be quite nice to have at some point to be prepared for an H3 tactic, but with having now some strong science production, and especially if I at the next turn can just go for another upgrade, then I thought the architecture might just be very nice to have. Maybe I can develop it in the next turn, go for another upgrade. That of course could mean that I maybe have some troubles to then afterwards get quickly into a government form and into coal. But no, if none of those cards is in a row at the next turn, it could just be nice to have the option to go for architecture. And if I can't go for the second upgrade without it, it maybe could still be nice to have in case I will build a lot more urban buildings in H3 when the game remains peaceful, or maybe just to have it in hand to finish a wonder efficiently later on. I draw 3 cards now, hoping to get something nice, and I do actually get some interesting stuff. 2 colonization cards, preparing myself nicely to win a colony, also making myself completely safe from the aggression, even though if PV4 has one, I expected him to go against e5. And the fortifications, maybe not ideal, but if I can maybe transition into it with winning a colony, it could be quite interesting. Also, the barbarians sadly haven't been revealed yet. I didn't really have a chance to prepare for it, apart from just making sure that I have a free population available. And sadly, PV4C, it seems that he didn't draw an H2 aggressions, which is a bit unfortunate for him. He could have gotten some nice value out of it. Instead, he will now seed and opens the barbarians, which sadly means that I will lose a population. PV4 then takes the breakthrough. I think the additional science is quite valuable for him, goes for another upgrade, and then takes the second copy of architecture. e5 this turn can finish the Great Wall, giving him a bit more strength, maybe making him a bit safer. Interestingly, he develops the irrigation. There's the selective breeding in the row, but maybe he just wants to be civil actions efficient and wants to get those 2 yellow cards, and there could also be the chance that he gets the ocean liner service at some point. That now means that I will have the chance to take the selective breeding for only 1, and now I seeded a good harvest into the deck, because it might just end up being a neutral event, but at least I have the chance to prepare for it. With going for the selective breeding, and also I know what is on top, and what is on top is actually the immigration, which makes a little bit up for the barbarians, because now I will just lose this population but immediately regain it with the immigration. So yeah, basically there were some barbarians that threaten my civilization, driving my people away, but immediately afterwards yeah, my realm is just too good that the people can't stay away from it forever, so the immigration is happening and I get the population back. I will definitely, I want to grab the selective breeding, just to have a way to get some additional food production going. Also when looking at the H2 leaders, I think one potentially interesting leader for me could be James Watt. If he is available at a nice time, could allow me to save quite a lot of science and resources and be a nice transitional leader. I could also take a leader from the row this turn, but I think Bach and Opera would just be a distraction. I think it's more important for me to build now my economy up. Robespierre could be interesting, making it a lot more easier to maybe get into a government form, but especially if I have maybe the chance to get Conmon, he wouldn't save me that much, and I rather wanted to stay open for James Watt, or maybe for Napoleon or Nobel if I maybe rather need some strength. So I take the selective breeding. I could now start going for it, but if you remember, then you might remember that rats are still coming, which was not a reason why I wanted to push, making it that those are out relatively quickly so that I can maybe start some food production in case there's nothing else to do. And yeah, but with the rats still being the deck, I don't want to start upgrading my food production. Instead, I will go for the architecture, will go for an upgrade to scientific method, and thanks to the revolutionary idea, I at the next turn would actually still be able to go for an H2 government form. Even now that I spent 6 science in the architecture, which of course then would mean that I can't go for selective breeding and a government form, maybe causing me some corruption issues, but I have a free population that I can maybe put into knights or something. So I, with that, was willing to invest into the architecture, save some resource immediately on this upgrade, and with the last civil action, I then actually this turn already will build a knight. I play the reserves for resources. That was not ideal because now I commit already what I want to use it for, but the resources should be helpful for me. I have now the selective breeding in hand to get some additional population. A good harvest will be coming, and so I just build a knight. I have now some colonization cards, so if a colony is revealed, it could be nice to maybe just have a knight sitting around, being able to win it with that. And yeah, and now I also needed to get out of corruption. So the next turn I could either go for a government form, or maybe for coal, or maybe for selective breeding. So hopefully I will have some nice options available. PV4 seeds, the call to arms is revealed, taking 1 civil action away from me. And then PV4 this turn will go for Bach. We'll go for the opera. He doesn't have the greatest economy yet, so maybe he just wants to go for a lot of culture production, maybe at the sacrifice of having a very strong economy, hoping that he can survive. There's Gandhi in H3, but for now, of course, he hasn't committed to anything and can also still build up a strong economy. E5 will offer the scientific cooperation pact to PV4, which I was, of course, not too happy to see. Also, I think it could potentially be a bit of a threatening pact for PV4, because E5 will now go for Robespierre, will now be able to go for Republic for actually 0 science, and afterwards goes for the justice system. As I said, he values civil actions quite highly, I think. Here we can see it. He's willing to go for the justice system. Is now at 9 civil actions and is definitely looking quite threatening. Has saved 4 science this turn, and PV4 maybe can go for architecture and opera. But after that, with having that many civil actions, the pact might be beneficial for E5, but maybe PV4 can cancel it then again. So it might still be fine for him and still should produce him some value against me. Then it is my turn. I can see what is on top, but I don't need Joan of Arc for that because it is the event that I've seeded the rats. And no, there are 2 government forms in a row at my turn, the Republic and the Common, but because of the call to arms, as you can see when I played the revolutionary idea, now I don't have enough civil actions left to go for the Common and develop it. Normally the Common would probably be the government form that I would prefer in the situation, with having the Code of Laws and with needing some military actions. But now I would need to wait for another turn in order to go for the Common. I don't really want to go for the selective breeding because the rats are in the deck, and I don't want to push the international negotiations because at the moment I really don't know if I will be able to win this one. And yeah, so I at the end made the decision to actually go for the Republic, which is dangerous because the strategy is out, but with the decision of going for the Republic, there's also the decision of going for Napoleon. I think if I go for the Republic, it's just too important to at least have 3 military actions available, and at least Napoleon gives me 4 additional strength, and once I lose Joan of Arc, I will actually lose 3 strength. So if I just wait for James Watt, then I will drop quite a bit in strength, and that could be quite dangerous. So I think Napoleon, even though it's maybe not ideal, could still be quite valuable to have just to make me safe and to have the 3rd military action. In case the Conmon would be available for 2, then maybe I would go for the Conmon, just wait for James Watt and then generate a lot of value, but I also don't know when James Watt will be available, because I have this rich land. I definitely want to start going for some upgrades at the next turn, and then James Watt would need to be in the row, otherwise it would be a bit awkward and I maybe wouldn't have any great leader to go for. Maybe I could still start going for the production and then go for James Watt afterwards, at least still saving a bit of resources and science, but it could be a bit awkward. I don't know when he will be in the row, and also I didn't want to delay going for my government form now, with going for selective breeding not being that great with the rats coming, and I didn't want to push the international negotiations into the deck to get the rats out of the deck. And so at the end I just went for the Republic, went for Napoleon to have my 3rd military action, and with my last civil action there's not really that much that I can do, and so I just ended up taking the navigation. If I draw something like Impact of Progress, it could potentially be nice to have, or maybe there are some colonies coming, or it could just be a technology that maybe could be worthwhile to invest 6 science into. I will just keep the colonization cards and the fortifications tactics, and I actually draw 2 more colonization cards. Sadly, I won't be able to push at the next turn. Yeah, but if there's maybe a colony revealed in e5's turn, I would now be very nicely prepared to win it. PV4 pushes and the reds are out now. I don't lose any food, so that event worked out quite nicely for me, even though it did restrict me a little bit on when I was able to go for the selective breeding. PV4 this turn goes for the constitutional monarchy using the scientific cooperation pack, takes the scientific method, and also the rifleman can now upgrade his warriors to rifleman at some point. Now it's e5's turn. He will play the wave of nationalism, develops the cannons, builds one, upgrades one swordsman to use all of the resources of the wave, is now at 90 in strength, goes for some upgrades to irrigation, takes the rifleman, the patriotism, the urban growth, and also the breakthrough. And now I think with having 11 science saved up, the breakthrough in hand, that many civil actions, the scientific cooperation pack could get a little bit tricky for PV4 to handle, so I was interested to see whether he will be willing to cancel it at this next turn. I'm now the weakest, but I will also see one last time what is on top. And what is on top is actually I have to take a quick look, the knowledge of the ancients, which is at least nothing bad, because I'm the weakest for now, but also not great, because I have only an H1 wonder, and especially e5 will get a lot more value out of this event. So this turn I definitely have to go for Napoleon, meaning that at least I will stay on 18 strength now. And then, of course, I definitely want to have a copy of coal, but the question is, do I actually want to start going for coal? I could go for 2 coal upgrades, but the thing is, I have a bit of a problem at the next turn. The age will end, and I will lose 2 yellow tokens, and I, again, as in the early H2, would need to disband something in case I don't prepare for it. The problem is if I go for 2 food upgrades, I'm just missing 1 food to increase my population at the next turn, which would solve my potential uprising issues. So that's a bit annoying, but if you may remember the event that I've seeded, it is the Good Harvest, and there are only 3 H1 events, so it's maybe not that unlikely that before my next turn, especially if I draw an event to seed, I was a bit unhappy to not have drawn an event that I can push now, because it would just make it more likely that maybe the Good Harvest is revealed before my next turn. Now it's a bit tricky if I don't draw an event, maybe only one of my opponents pushes, then there's only 1 card revealed, but maybe I will draw an event, maybe there will be some events pushed, so I was just hoping that maybe the Good Harvest will be revealed, because I think that would be of really big help for me, and I just have to prepare myself to not have an uprising. So with that, I made the decision to first go for the selective breeding and then go for the coal afterwards. At least I have the Silk Road. I will take the fission upgrades. I have some resource bonuses from there, and having a lot of population in H3 can also be quite important. So instead of going for the coal, after taking the cannons, which I also wanted to have now that I've missed out on the rifleman, which I didn't take at a turn before, I will go for 2 selective breeding upgrades, getting me out of corruption, take the efficient upgrade and the frugality. Both of those cards I can use with the Silk Road bonus, and now I was just really hoping that first of all I will draw an event and that the Good Harvest will be revealed before my next turn, so that I don't have to disband anything, because that would be a bit of a setback in case that should happen, so I was a little bit afraid of that. And now it's PV4's turn, and he will, first of all H3 will start, and then he will push. Knowledge of the Ancients is revealed, so I of course knew that the top event was not the Good Harvest, which made it a bit more threatening that maybe this event won't be revealed before my next turn, but at least PV4 pushes now, maybe making it that there is a chance that the Good Harvest will be revealed before my next turn, and then he will develop the architecture this turn with the Scientific Cooperation Pact. Will also go for the Opera. He's now very low in science, and he makes a very interesting decision this turn. He upgrades 1 lab, and then he will actually destroy 1 lab, going down to 0 science production right now. That is very interesting, a very big commitment. He will then build another opera, going up to 12 culture production, and take the urban growth, so that he can build another opera relatively cheaply. So now 12 culture production will be 25 culture, will very quickly now take the culture lead, but he is at 0 science, and has not upgraded his farms yet, so he can get punished heavily by impacts, can get quite into some trouble, potentially if there's maybe a military push. So it's a very risky play, but also a very interesting one, because it at least allows him to mess a little bit with e5 with the Scientific Cooperation Pact, because he has now used the pact 2 times, 1 more again, and the problem is he has no science left, and in such a case it is actually not longer possible for e5 to develop any technologies, because the partner of the pact can't pay any science for it. So in case he wants to develop a technology, he needs to cancel the pact, and that maybe messes a little bit with him. Maybe that is quite a nice way to actually get rid of the pact while still using it and not giving too much value to e5. And yeah, so a very interesting turn. Maybe there just weren't the nicest options for pv4 to improve his economy. I mean, he could have maybe just gone for the ocean liner service or something like this. He wouldn't have been able to finish it because he needed to develop the architecture this turn. No, but he instead makes the decision to go for a very greedy play, but also one that maybe puts a bit of pressure on me in e5 because we have now to find some ways to punish this. I was not too afraid because I think it is a big commitment. There are plenty of ways how he can get punished, but of course we have to find those ways, and with that it will now be interesting to see how h3 will be going. And e5, let's see if he will just cancel the pact or if he maybe doesn't want to use it this turn. And he finds a relatively nice way to get rid of the pact. He offers the international trade agreement to me and with that cancels the pact. Of course, I had to think about if maybe it could be worthwhile to reject this now so that e5 at this one turn can't develop any technologies. But I came to the conclusion that it isn't a big issue at this turn for e5. If there would be something in a row now, like an early oil, and e5 with having that many resources saved up could just go for a lot of upgrades immediately, then I think it could definitely be worthwhile to just cancel the pact. In such a scenario, maybe e5 would have also just canceled the pact himself to make it certain that he can go for something like this. But in this case, I thought that maybe, with not having that much production for e5, it could actually be best to just take and finish the ocean line, in which case he doesn't develop a technology anyway, and then I didn't want to miss out on the additional resources that I get from this pact and was willing to accept it, even though it is now a nice way for e5 to get rid of the scientific cooperation pact. And indeed, he will just, even with now being able to develop technologies, just go for the ocean liner service and finish it, so I think it was the right decision for me to accept this pact. Now it is my turn. As you can see, I seed the prosperity into the deck. I was happy that I've drawn an event giving me now the chance to push at least. Sadly, with canceling or with going to zero science, e5 couldn't use this politics phase nicely to push an event, and now I was really hoping for the good harvest to be revealed, because if it isn't revealed, that leaves me at a bit of awkward situation. I would need to disband something, and everything that I could disband I think would be quite annoying. Disbanding mine is not really that ideal, because I would really like to get some resource production going now. Disbanding military unit would cost me a draw, would drop me down even further in strength, and the conquistadors tactic that I have now could at least be somewhat nice with having 3 knights and 2 warriors. So I was just now really hoping to see the good harvest, which would fix my issues. But sadly, the event revealed is not a good harvest. Instead, it is the uncertain borders costing me a yellow token, and now I was not really happy about it, and thought that now that could really cause some issues for me. As you see, I at the end made the decision to disband a knight. I was not willing to sacrifice any economy here, a civil action to disband a mine, and just disbanded a knight, making it that I can still defend myself against an aggression, at least, and only missing out on a draw, which is of course really not ideal that early in h3. And yeah, but even apart from doing the decision on what to disband, it was a really tough turn for me, where I took some time and wasn't really certain what to do, because there are a lot of cards that maybe could be interesting to take. There's a first copy of Air Forces, there's a copy of Modern Infantry allowing me to go for some infantry upgrades. There are leaders in the row that could potentially be interesting, Einstein for example. There's Gandhi that pv4 could use to hide behind, but at the moment I don't have a way to go for military pressure anyway, so I don't think I should really consider denying him, but it's also an interesting card to see here already. And then card that also is very interesting to see are those 2 copies of multimedia, which I was not too happy to see, because if e5 gets one of those copies, which is maybe not that unlikely, then he can just go for building one very easily. He has an easily enough resource saved up with the ocean liner, has easily enough population, and I think that will be such a nice thing for him to invest into, and also allows him to get a quick replacement for Robespierre, because Fleming is coming down the road. There's the Hollywood in the game. He might be able to get a second copy of movies with having that many civil actions relatively easily. And yeah, I really thought if he gets this multimedia running, he might just have an advantage over me, especially now that I have some issues with having to disband this knight and maybe making things a bit awkward for me. And no, so at the end I made a bit of a gamble, or not really a gamble, but I wanted to keep the hope alive that e5 doesn't get a copy of multimedia, and in order to do that, I will take a copy of multimedia, will make the other copy fall down to one civil action for pv4, and I was hoping that maybe he also sees this as quite threatening potential for e5, especially with the Hollywood in the game, with Fleming coming down the row, and then I was hoping maybe he will take it for one. It has only limited hand space, so I was not too confident about it, but I wanted to keep this hope alive because I was really thinking if e5 invests into multimedia, I'm in big trouble, so I this turn will first of all go for the coal. The Silk Road again, like in one of the turns earlier where I built a religion without the urban growth, again causes me a bit of corruption issues. If I use the efficient upgrade, it's not enough to get out of corruption. I thought about maybe just building a religion after doing this, but at the end I just made the decision to delay the use of the efficient upgrade and go for an upgrade without it. And then I will take the multimedia asset. However, taking the multimedia means that I can't take both the air forces and modern infantry, leaving me somewhat vulnerable. And with me not having the most population, I mean, I will get a good harvest after frugality, so I actually have a decent amount of population, but I just lost a yellow token, so I will have a bit of happy face issues maybe. And with that, and not having a very strong tactic that I can easily go for, I at the end rather went for the modern infantry. Maybe I can hope to get a second copy of Air Forces for PV4. The Air Forces doesn't do anything anyway. It's definitely still risky, but I was at this point willing to take the risk, and then I have two civil actions left, and I will take the Cavalryman and Einstein. The Cavalryman just sets me up for H3 tactics, which could be quite interesting, especially now that I have skipped the Air Forces, and Einstein wasn't a clear pick. Could have, for example, taken the Frugality. And just getting even more food going, which could be fine. But at the end I went for Einstein because Napoleon, of course, helps me quite a bit with his strength in his military action. But also I think if I stay with him for a long time, I just think it is too weak to really do something. And I was just hoping that in one of the next turns, maybe the military theory is in the row, and if that is in the row, I want to have a replacement leader for Napoleon immediately. And I could, of course, wait for some different leaders. There's Bill Gates, who could be interesting, but I don't know when those leaders will be available. Now I have the chance to take Einstein for one civil action. I know now that as soon as a military theory is available, I can go for Einstein immediately. I'm getting a leader that will produce me some culture, produce me some science production, maybe set myself up for nice impacts, which is a way how potentially I could punish PV4 for having gone to this commitment and going down to zero science. So yeah, I at the end made the decision to go for Einstein, but I was really not certain about this turn. It felt very awkward to disband this knight. Missing out the Air Force is not great. I wasn't really not happy about this multimedia being there because I, of course, hope now that maybe PV4 will take it away, but he has limited hand space and could just be fine with leaving it to e5, but I think for e5 it's a very strong thing to get, so maybe I was hoping that PV4 will deny it his turn. I again keep the fortifications tactic. As you can see, I actually discard the conquistadors, which is, I think, maybe a mistake actually. I was a bit surprised when I saw that when I took a look at the replay, because I have now the modern infantry. It's a bit easier. Oh, actually, the problem is the medieval army tactic is upgraded, so if I just go for two upgrades to modern infantry, the medieval army tactic is still the better tactic. Then I would need to go for two knights. Then, of course, the conquistador tactic would be better, but I could also just go for another knight and another modern infantry maybe, so I just thought the conquistadors are maybe not really that much better. I mean, the fortifications maybe aren't as well, so I could have also just kept the conquistadors instead, but maybe with a colony and maybe if I get military build-up or something, maybe it could be possible to get a little bit more out of the fortifications, but I think both of those tactics won't be a big upgrade, and I draw another positional army, which at least could be an interesting one. The Good Harvest is revealed now, giving me 6 food, but it was revealed a little bit too late, sadly for me. PV4 will go to 16 culture production, and he doesn't take any risk of getting hit by a war. We'll just go for Gandhi immediately, because for him, if e5 gets a military theory at his next turn and maybe as a tactic, then he could maybe go for a war immediately if he's drawn one. That's of course not that likely, but maybe it's also not necessary to take this risk with electing Gandhi. PV4 makes sure that he can't get hit by a war. Both of his opponents are on Republic, and he still produces a decent amount of cultures, of course missing out on some culture, but yeah, it just feels quite a bit safer, as he has taken a risky line anyway. And then he has some civil actions left, and I was really hoping, take this multimedia. He will go for the Hollywood. which maybe makes the multimedia a little bit less valuable for e5 when he now gets it together with flaming, but sadly there is also still the internet, and sadly pv4 doesn't take the multimedia, instead interestingly takes the frugality. He's stuck on 3 foot at the moment, making it really look like there might be an event coming where the frugality will actually be helpful for him, or maybe he's just hoping to get another copy of reserves at some point. I have knowledge about the prosperity, so sadly that will actually help him, but he doesn't have knowledge about it, so maybe that could be an indicator that a colony or something is coming, where then the frugality could be quite nice to have for him. Now it's e5's turn, he will cede, and the event revealed is the terrorism, which again was not really a great thing for me to see. e5 can now destroy a building, he makes the decision to destroy an organized religion from me and an opera from pv4. Now I'm basically forced to rebuild it at my next turn, costing me 5 resources in a civil action, and again maybe making it that I have difficulties to get my further development going. So I was quite afraid that with having to disband this knight and Gustavus being late and now the terrorism, I have a lot of issues. Meanwhile, pv4 is running away with the culture, and e5 has now the possibility to set up a big multimedia. So I was quite afraid on the direction that this game was developing into. e5 will now go for multimedia, putting him at 7 science, 5 culture reduction. With going for flaming, he is not even at 8 culture reduction. I think it's very strong for him to replace Robespierre that early. He's of course only in 2 military actions, but I have a lot of issues now. pv4 is Gandhi, so he doesn't have to really be afraid of the military. It's only a bit annoying for him to maybe miss out on some draws. While some things have gone bad for me, at least I was very happy to see that a copy of military theory is available for me. This turn I basically have to rebuild this religion, there's not really any way around it, and so I will go for that, and then I will elect Einstein, go for the military theory, develop it, make sure that I get 5 draws going, and now I will at least start generating some culture from my leader. I'm now at 9 science production, which is quite strong, and I was just hoping that I will now start drawing some nice impacts, which could allow me to maybe punish pv4 and maybe stay in this game. And also another nice thing is that I am, after increasing my population to get out of corruption, I'm actually able to take the space flight, which has the potential to at least maybe be in the high 20s at the end, again giving me maybe an option to catch up some culture on pv4 and maybe stay somewhat competitive against e5, who as soon as he will get movies can really start a lot of culture production. Now I have 1 civil action left, and I made a decision. I could just increase my population one time with the frugality or something, but I made a decision to take this copy of computers. First of all, it's a very cheap technology with Einstein, and it just allows me to get even more science production, maybe getting more value out of him and also the space flight. Now I was very interested to see what I will draw. Sadly, I don't draw any impact, at least the international tourism, even though that's not really the biggest one. I don't think I can really offer it to e5, that would just be too big of a difference between what we are getting, and we saw Martin in one of the 4-player games, I think, offer such an international tourism pack to e5, and he rejected it, and in this case it's not even I might even be the bigger threat to him than pv4. I don't know which position he would value better, so I think I have to offer to pv4, which at least will both of us help a little bit, but no, not really that much. Then there's a military alliance between pv4 and e5, giving both of them some additional strength. Also, I am quite vulnerable at the moment, don't have any resource in hand to build some military units, but the good thing is at least e5 is now on 2 military actions. Even if he gets the military theory, he just doesn't have enough to declare war unless he has the hybrid war or an h2 war, but he also has a lot of nice stuff to do peacefully, so I was hoping that I won't get punished for with my weak military position at the moment. pv4 will build a step of the Hollywood to get out of corruption, takes the reserves, maybe allowing him to get more population out, and takes even another copy of reserves. I was maybe hoping that he would take the military theory away, but even with the military theory, e5 can't really go for war. Time is ticking down, and going for military theory and h3 government form, I don't think it would work very nicely, so pv4 instead just takes the reserves, which is a helpful card for himself. And now we maybe see why pv4 picked the frugality. Is now not only reserves in hand, but with him winning the inhabited territory for an army, which is somewhat costly, but at least he is now back into this area of the yellow bank, and now actually the frugality is allowing him to get 2 additional population, or one additional population out, of course. So that makes the frugality now quite a strong card out of the sudden. e5 will go for the movie, sadly improving his culture production by quite a bit. At least the Hollywood is gone and the internet is not in the row yet, maybe making it a bit difficult for him to actually take it later on. But he also goes for the military theory, takes the patriotism, and now he is also looking a bit threatening, has two patriotisms in hand, still has the Great Wall, so I have to be a bit careful now. This turn I can't push. Also, if I took a look at my hand, at least I couldn't give him any knowledge about any impacts. If you want to see it positive, I will now offer the international tourism to BB4. Also, E5 knows now exactly what tactics I have available. And yeah, this turn, again, it's the question, what should I really do? There's not that much time left, so the question is, should I even go for this mine upgrade? But with the efficient upgrade, it will pay back relatively quickly, gives me a cheap way to make space in my hand, because I have a relatively full hand. I think a completely full hand before I use the sufficient upgrade, but I can with that make space in my hand relatively easily. I could have, of course, also maybe gone for computers, just use the efficient upgrade there. I wouldn't get a full value out of it, but it could still be nice. But I wanted to leave most of my science available for the military, because now E5 could out of the sudden be dangerous. He knows what tactics I have in hand. I mean, we'll get one more draw, but I think this turn I have to be a lot more careful, and so I didn't want to invest science into computers when it maybe rather need a science to maybe threaten something, to go for a lot of those military techs. So I just used the efficient upgrade for some upgrade. I will also build a religion that of course costs some resources now, but there's one card in a row that has the potential to give me quite a lot of resources, would give me enough resources to at least build 2 cannons and go, no actually not. It's not enough to go for 2 cannons and 2 upgrades to modern infantry. So it's again making me not completely safe from a war at all. At least I could go maybe for 2 cannons and cavalryman with the mechanized army tactic, so there are some ways, and also there could be some help from the H2 cards that maybe E5 has to be afraid of, and he still has a lot of peaceful options. So I was just hoping that if I have the military build up in hand, even though I'm missing 1 to get 20 resources for the military going, that I just hopefully am still threatening enough with potential H2 events coming, and if he has a war and maybe a strong tactic, it could potentially get dangerous. But if he invests resources into the military, at least it makes his potential internet less big. He isn't increasing his culture production any longer. And also I have to take some risks here in this position. I think I can't play it completely safe, and I need to build this religion anyway. It gets me out of corruption. I need the happy faces anyway, so I could maybe wait with it, but I also have to make space in my hand. Can't easily take a lot of cards in hand, so a bit of a tough position that I'm in, and I think I can't play it completely safe here. I will take the military build up, of course, still. Will then use the frugality to make again space in my hand. Will then take the revolutionary idea, then develop the cannons to make space man. I could have also taken civil service, developed it, maybe preparing me for some more impacts, but again, I wanted to have some science saved up that I can use for the military to be a bit more threatening and maybe have more options that E5 has to be afraid of. So develop the cannons, at least scoring 3 culture with Einstein, and then take the urban growth. So I just made space, my hand took a card, made space in my hand took a card. That was basically this turn, and at least I have now some strong yellow cards, especially with the Silk Road. I have a lot of technologies that I can develop with Einstein, and maybe in case E5 isn't looking that dangerous, can start going for multimedia at the next turn. And now, also the game might potentially end very quickly. If PV4 is probably interested in taking as many cards as possible, and E5 sadly has a lot of civil actions. We will have to see at my next turn if I maybe have the chance to prolong the game, or if it will already be at the end of the age very quickly. I could have, of course, taken less cards, but I think all of those cards are just too valuable for me, and I don't want to miss out on them. I will draw some cards, and I wasn't too happy about it. I have now 1 impact in hand, but if you take a look at E5 civilization, he has a lot of wonders, so this impact is only seedable if I don't see any chance to finish before E5 and just want to get 1 or 2 points against PV4, so really not an ideal impact for me. The PV4 seeds and the prosperity is revealed, giving me in E5 6 additional food. PV4 gets less, but it's still just an additional population for him. So out of the sudden he has a lot of free population, takes the revolutionary idea that allows him to maybe go for the rifleman in case that is needed, builds a religion to get a bit more culture reduction going, then goes for another army, making it that he just is a bit stronger. Maybe there was some risk to get hit by an aggression that didn't want to have, and so he just goes for that. Has now a bit of a Culture lead already. I will at least get a space flight Culture from Einstein, but I'm falling behind and I don't draw any impacts, and impacts might be the way how I can catch up to PV4. So now I was mostly hoping that maybe E5 is pushing some impacts in, that it will actually turn out to be quite nice for me. There might be some that are just good for both of us, yeah, but I myself sadly don't have an impact to work with for now. E5 opens the immigration, but no one is in the unhappy population. He will now go for the engineering. That is a very important card for him because it makes it a lot more likely that he can maybe, even when the age ends, just take and finish the internet at the next turn, and also it allows him to actually build another multimedia and increase his culture reduction while still being able to potentially go for an internet at the next turn. He also uses the patriotism 2 still to build one more swordsman, maybe setting himself up better for some impacts potentially. No, actually not that much, only the competition. I thought for a moment maybe also for harmony, but he has only 5 workers in the mines and farms. And at the next turn, he can potentially take the internet, play the resources, use the engineering genius for 2 resources only, but then being able to build 4 steps at once with the engineering. I think this doesn't work though if the internet is in 4 civil actions, or in the 3 civil action area. Then I think he's missing one. I mean, he has 9 civil actions, he has 4 wonders, so it takes 6 to take the internet. Then the 7th civil action would be to play the reserves. No, actually, I think even if the internet is available on this area, he still can go for it. Now, so he's basically just perfectly prepared to finish the internet. The internet will be quite a big wonder for him. And also the Empire State Building could actually be a somewhat decent wonder, but the internet should be better for him. I sadly can't use my politics phase, and now, as you can see, there are 7 cards left in the deck. If I don't take any card from the row, apart from, I mean, I can't take both of those cards, so if I don't take any card from the row, then I can maybe make it that the game goes on for one more turn, because PV4 has 6 civil actions, he needs to make space in his hand to take for 3 cards that cost him 3 civil actions, and then he's only 3 civil actions left to take. However, one of the cards that will be on the row will be the Empire State Building, so he has to take 1 card for 2, meaning he is just not enough to end the age, unless there's some card reveal that might help him. But the question is, would that even be that beneficial for me? I will have only 1 more draw, so the chance that I maybe get 2 nice impacts and can push 2 times is not that high. And for the moment, E5 and PV4 both have more culture production. E5 would just be able to make his internet even bigger, so against E5 it would just be bad anyway. But I was mostly hoping that maybe I can at least finish before PV4. If E5 maybe has some nice impacts, also for me seeded, and if maybe I draw now 1 last strong impact that I can push. And now I just didn't want to pay a big cost to prolong the game here. I don't think it's necessarily beneficial for me. Ending the game ending very quickly is also not that ideal, especially against PV4, but he has more culture reduction, so an additional turn has also some benefits for him. And with that, now I just build the multimedia, get more science production, more culture production, giving me more science to maybe develop more technologies at the next turn. I will use the military build-up for 10 resources, building 2 cannons, putting me at 23 strength, meaning that even if I lose the 2 H2 colonization cards, I think those are H2 cards, even if I lose those, I am not in danger of an aggression by E5, who will be able to take a look at my hand again. And then I will increase my population to get out of corruption and just take the reserves. That is very mandatory if I don't want to prolong the game, because I needed to be able to finish the space flight at the next turn. At the next turn I will be able to develop 2 technologies and finish the space flight. And now I was hoping maybe I could get the satellites, because maybe if I could have seeded something like progress, and that maybe could be one hope, or maybe I will draw an impact like progress. So I was now very interested to see what impact I might draw, and I do draw at least a seedable one. The impact of variety will give me a decent amount of points against PV4, will be relatively equal against E5, so at least potentially strong impact, but not one of the ones that maybe would be really big for me, especially impact of technology, of course. Could potentially be quite strong, even though I don't actually have that many H3 technologies developed, so it wouldn't even be that strong of an impact. Still quite strong, but not completely over the roof or something. I mean, it would give me plus 16 probably, so that's definitely still a nice value. Then the autonomous territory is revealed, and I was very happy that I didn't plan for prolonging the game, because now PV4 has an additional civil action, and even if there would be 5 cards left, he could now end the age, and that could have punished me heavily because I wouldn't be prepared to finish the space flight. But I also didn't consider it that much actually to prolong the game, because I don't think that would really be worth it. PV4 plays the revolutionary idea, goes for the rifleman, takes the mech egg in hand, efficient upgrade, basically just to make sure that the age will end, plays the reserves, goes for some upgrades, reveals the classic army, is now 24 strength, and then he will just actually build a mine. Interestingly, maybe he has something like Impact of Industry, and then at the next turn he can just finish the Hollywood, also play the endowment, and yeah, then he has actually quite a big culture lead. I have now only the Impact of Variety. I have really to hope that maybe E5 has seeded impacts like technology, progress and stuff, that maybe I have the chance to get the satellites. Otherwise, no, I think it could get quite difficult for me to overtake PV4. E5 seeds, the impact of architecture is revealed, so the first impact that we see from E5 is one that is actually giving both of us some points against PV4, so that's at least a start, but not one of the really big impacts. He will then go for the internet, and oh, actually I think I did a miscalculation at the turn before. If it would be in the 3 civil action area, it would have even cost 7 civil actions to take. So the internet needs to be on the 2 civil action area, otherwise E5 would either need to go for the Empire State Building or maybe set up for just more impacts and more cultural production. But with the internet being on 2, he has now just enough civil actions to play reserves, build 4 stages for 1 civil action with the engineering, then use the engineering genius for 2 resources to finish it for 26 points, so definitely not bad. At least he can't do anything else. Interestingly, he is using the ocean liner service, which is not really that much understandable. It doesn't cause, it doesn't have more production than famine before, so it doesn't change anything for agriculture, doesn't change anything for population, because the population is unhappy, but it costs him points for happiness. So either he has knowledge about this, or but then he of course doesn't want to give this knowledge to his opponent, so maybe just an oversight by him, unless I'm missing something. Because is there still an H2 event coming? That could maybe... There are still H2 events coming, so with those events, maybe if there's a colony reveal that he will win, then maybe it could actually be somewhat beneficial potentially still, but yeah, an interesting decision to use the ocean liner service. At my turn, I kinda need to hope and see the impact of variety. Actually, it could potentially, there could have been a reason to not see the impact of variety, because when we take the standings into account, if I lose this game and E5 wins this game, then I would actually be locked at 4th position, which of course would be quite a disappointing result that I definitely would like to try to avoid. And yeah, and for this I basically have 2 outs. Either I hope that I can maybe, with the help of E5's impacts, finish before PV4. I didn't have that much hope to finish before E5, but maybe with the right impacts, if maybe E5 has seeded technology or something, I maybe have some hopes to finish before PV4. That would be one way. If I then finish at the 2nd position, I at least have still some chances to overtake at least one of my opponents. Or the other way would be if PV4 actually wins this game before E5. So I could potentially have thought about not seeding the impact of variety and maybe hoping to that PV4 wins the game. But it was, but I just thought if there are the right impacts, E5 might have a strong position potentially. There are some impacts where he maybe isn't that great in, and he of course needs to have drawn the right impacts. So, but I just rather wanted to play for my own 2nd place than just doing something in order to hope that one of the other players wins. That would maybe also already be in a gray area of sportsmanship. So I think it's just a lot better to push the impact of variety here. And the event revealed is the impact of government, which I was not really happy to see, because I really need to hope for some strong impacts from E5, and that is the one that gives me 0 points against PV4, so my hopes to finish before PV4 were really dwindling at this point. This turn I can develop the computers, go for the satellites, develop 2 technologies with Einstein, then I play the reserves, can just finish the space flight. Satellites will give me points for variety, and I maybe have to hope that something like Impact of Progress is in there. And I finished the space flight for 28 points, so that's at least something. Now it's PV4's turn. Sadly, I see that he has an impact to seed, which is not ideal, and the freedom of movement is revealed, which actually gives him the chance now to improve something. He interestingly makes the decision to put an iron into Rifleman. Now it's again looking at like he has not any impact of industries. Maybe he just had the option to build a mine without any drawbacks and then just did it for potential impact of industry. Now he's actually putting a work into the military, which might help him for competition, but also make sure that he's stronger than me, making it that he would score more points in an impact of strength than me, which again takes one impact away from that could potentially be in there, where I maybe could have potentially scored some nice points against him. He will then finish the Hollywood. How many points did he get from the endowment? Sadly, the full 6, because I now did score some points. With finishing the space flight and getting some more culture with Einstein. PV4 then upgrades this one mine and ends his turn, and before the final impacts we can see that PV4 has a bit of a lead, but only 15 points before E5, so he could definitely get punished by impacts. Sadly, I'm quite a bit behind, so I really need the perfect impacts to be in there in order to overtake PV4, and PV4 has succeeded on impact himself, so at this point I was not really confident, and I was really fearing that maybe E5 might win this game just now, and that I sadly don't have a chance to finish at the second position. So let's see what the final impacts have to say. The first one is the impact of agriculture. Interestingly, that is the one that's actually best for me and at least allows me to catch up some points to both of my opponents, so I'm actually not that much behind E5 now. The next one is the impact of population. That one was maybe seeded by E5 very likely, will allow him to catch up quite some points to PV4, but he's still 9 points behind him. I am now again more behind E5, but at least catched up some points to PV4. There's the impact of variety seeded by me, which is best for me. I get 20 out of this impact, making it that I'm now 9 points behind E5 and 12 points behind PV4. PV4 so 3 points lead before E5. Now it will be very exciting to see what will be the last impact, which player will be able to win this game, and will I be able to overtake one of those opponents, which is of course not that likely, but maybe with an impact of technology or something, I could still hope to overtake PV4 here. And the impact is actually the impact of competition, which is not really a great one for me. So I finished at the last position, but the good news for me are it's also not that great of an impact for E5, meaning that he will end up at the second position and PV4 actually wins the game, which at least means that I still have chances to fight for the third place in the upcoming games, as we will see at when we take a look at the standings very soon. So definitely, of course, not a great game for me, another loss, but at the end I at least was happy that even though I seeded impact of variety, PV4 was actually able to win this game, giving me now some hope that to maybe overtake E5 still in the standings, as we will see in a minute. Now, so this game was actually quite close at the end, so even though I had some problems, at least I managed to make it somewhat close. With a different set of impacts, maybe I would have some chances to overtake PV4. And PV4 did actually at the end get rewarded for his zero science play. I think it definitely could have gone wrong in many ways. Gandhi could have been late and he could have gone punished by military. There could have been definitely impacts that would have punished him a bit more than the ones that were in there, like technology. Progress was actually not that bad for him, but still would have scored some points for his opponents against him. So at the end, he just got the Gandhi, managed to defend himself, and meanwhile I sadly struggled a little bit with the terrorism, with the good harvest being late and me having to disband something that just cost me a little bit of tempo, cost me some resources that I maybe otherwise would have spent to get an upgrade going quicker, and that made it quite difficult. Also with the spending the nights, I missed out on one draw, and it was an issue for me that I didn't really have that many impacts available to seed. So at the end I sadly finished at the last place in this game. E5 I thought for a long time might be the favorite to win this one, with him getting the multimedia and flaming. I really thought he might just get a lot of culture production, get a big internet, and then just some nice impacts might be enough. But PV4 at the end also still managed to keep his culture lead, had the endowment, and at the end wasn't punished too heavily by the impacts, and with that he actually won the game, which as I said I was at the end actually quite happy about. And at the end sadly another loss for me. And we will now take a look at the standings and see how the standings are looking and what is still possible for me to do in the two-player games that are now about to come. And here we have the current standings, and maybe if you take a close look, you realize that it's actually not completely true what I had just said, because even if e5 would have won this game, he would have been at 14 points instead of 11, so with 3 wins in the two-player games, and especially important, of course, the two-player game against e5, I would still have chances to overtake him. Let me just say so much, in one of the two-player games, it wasn't looking that nicely for me, which is why I remember those thoughts that I just had, which I indeed, and was the reason why I was happy that PV4 won it, so that even if I should lose one of the two-player games, if I win two, and especially I have to win the one against e5 and one other two-player game now, and that would allow me to finish at the third place at the end. If e5 would have won this game, I would need to win all of the two-player games, making it definitely more difficult to still be at the third position at the end. Now, so 5 games have finished now for me. I have only 5 points. I didn't win a single game yet. Really didn't get any great results going. So a bit of a disappointing World Championship final for me so far. But at least I still have the chance to be at the third position. And that would be a very nice goal for me, because at the end, the top 3 places are definitely more often mentioned. It would mean that I score a bronze medal, and it would mean that I am part of the prize pool. The last place in the final, sadly, doesn't really get any prizes. So now I was really hoping that maybe I could get some nice results going, at least in the two-player games, and at least secure myself the third position. PV4 is now locked at second position, so he has now won the silver medal. Congratulations to him as well. And now the games that are now about to come are all the two-player games, and I need to win the one against e5 and one of the other ones in order to be at the third position. So I hope you're looking forward to that, to see if I at least will be able to finish at the third position at the end. And then I also hope that it was an interesting game for you to watch. I have to see how quickly I will be able to upload the other games. I mean, those are only two-player games, so maybe I will find a game in between, but it's getting a bit nearer to Christmas, and as you might know that sometimes there's a little bit less time than maybe in other parts of the year, so I have to see how quickly I will be able to record those other videos, but those are only two-player games, so maybe I will actually be able to get those done relatively quickly. And then thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.